welcome back to Anton's class. Today's video is going to be dealing at Eurocentrism and the Eurocentric attacks on the melanated people around the globe. So here's a definition for you of what Eurocentrism is for those of you who are unsure. It refers to a discursive tendency to interpret the histories and cultures of non-European societies from a European or Western perspective. Common features of Eurocentric thought include ignoring or undervaluing non-European societies as inferior to Western, ignoring or undervaluing what Asians or Africans do with their own society, or seeing the histories of non-European societies simply in European terms. And I would of course include Australian and Native American and Pacific Islander in that list as well, because this has affected the entire globe. Now, as individuals from non-European societies or cultures, we have experienced people with Eurocentric worldviews attempting to deride, disrespect, dehumanize us, melanated masterpieces, for such a long time, right? And if you're a racist watching this video, go ahead and click off. This video is not for you. I repeat, it is not for you. My entire channel is not for you, and I do not create content for you. My content is created for everyone who is interested in uplifting the voices of the entire planet, and in particular for my melanated people around the globe. Shout out to my people of African descent, my people of South Asian descent, my people of Native American descent, these peoples who have experienced the Western gaze and have been dehumanized for such a long time. It is my job to help us regain our dignity. So as melanated people around the globe, our cultures and histories have been filtered through the white gaze and often devalued. Okay, we have seen this all over the globe, from Africa to South Asia to the Americas, the South Pacific, Southeast Asia. Whenever European explorers encountered people of color, they attempted to discredit their accomplishments by suggesting that these people could not possibly have created such magnificent works of architecture or art. They said it with the Mayans when they encountered their pyramids. They said it with the Inca. They said it with the Dravidian societies in India. Of course, they said the same thing with West Africans when they encountered the magnificent works of art from the Benin Empire and the Yoruba. And of course, with ancient Egypt. There is an underlying belief within Eurocentric circles that people of non-European ancestry are inherently inferior. So in order to uplift that false reality, they had to explain away the civilizations they encountered. You know, it's like a form of cognitive dissonance. And they tried to lift these indigenous cultures out of their indigenous context. So with ancient Egypt, Eurocentrics attempt to lift ancient Egypt out of its black African context. Of course, this is a form of mental delusion because we can clearly see the marks of black African people in ancient Egypt. We see that racism is a form of mental illness, and oftentimes people suffering from mental illness will attempt to drag others into their delusions. One such delusion is the idea that ancient Egyptian royalty were somehow white people, but decided to depict themselves as black. Now, what sort of mental delusion would have them think that these very obvious, clear images of beautiful black people were somehow white people who randomly woke up one day and decided to depict themselves as black? That is serious mental delusion. One the Eurocentrics have attempted to drag the world into believing. As melanated people around the globe, I do not recommend engaging racists. Okay, as a side note, they again are suffering from a form of mental illness, and they will attempt to drag you into their delusions. That's a symptom of suffering from mental illness. All right, they like to drag others into believing their delusions. All right, avoid that at all costs. When I encounter racists, they are blocked with the quickness, and their names will never have the privilege of being on my platform. Again, this community here on YouTube and over at my website, antonsclass.com, go and check that out, is not for racists. It is for you. For all of you, my melanated masterpieces, and of course for those non-melanated brothers and sisters among us who understand the work that I'm doing here. So back to the topic of ancient Egypt. We observe very clear and stark evidence to support the fact that ancient Egypt was established by black African populations from the Green Sahara and from around the region of Upper Egypt and Nubia. When we look at sites like Nabta Playa, which was a black African Nile Valley civilization predating ancient Egypt, we see the telltale signs of an early African civilization that led to ancient Egyptian civilization taking shape there. King Narmer, the king who unified Upper and Lower Egypt, was from the south, and his facial features are remarkably, astoundingly black African. There is no way to deny that fact unless, of course, one is suffering from serious mental delusion. So all of you out there in my community, again, I recommend you don't engage racists, okay, when you encounter them in the comment section, in real life, on social media. They're suffering from a form of mental delusion, and they aren't worth your time. Unless that is your calling to go and minister to the racists, I don't recommend you engage them because they will attempt to drag you into their delusions. So again, the Green Sahara was inhabited by ancient black African people. The magnificent melanin is written on the walls in the form of Saharan rock art, depicting the African ancestors. The oldest mummy in Africa is the mummified body of a child discovered in Libya at Wan Muhujaj, and was named the Black Mummy because his features were clearly black African. The child was part of a population that practiced mummification prior to the mummification we see in ancient Egypt, and is likely of the ancestral population of the Green Sahara that would later go to establishing ancient Egyptian civilization. Another interesting fact that demonstrates the black African origins and affinity of royal ancient Egyptian mummies is their limb proportions. Now, black people generally have longer limbs and shorter torsos, and ancient Egyptian pharaohs were no exception. Their biology places them firmly with black African origins and within a black African context. I have another video discussing these finds. I'll leave that here for you to check out. In that video, I discuss the genetics of Amarna royal mummies, which clusters them with black Africans, as well as the fact that E1B1A, which is a black African paternal line of ancestry, was discovered with ancient Egyptian mummies. So go and check that out. Now, there were non-black people living in ancient Egypt, particularly in the northern part of Egypt called Lower Egypt in ancient times, near and around the Fayum in particular. There is evidence that these people migrated into coastal North Africa thousands of years ago from the Levant. The Levant is in the Near East, it's neighboring Egypt. Interestingly, the Hebrews in the Bible were said to have entered into Egypt and began to reside there. You guys know the story of Abraham and his descendant, Moses. We see with the mummies at Abu Sir al-Melek, which are from the New Kingdom, the Greek era, and the Roman era of Egypt, that there were non-black populations occupying the region near the Fayum. And this is actually not surprising because we know that migrants from the Levant moved into North Africa and began to occupy that region. They represented a foreign element that moved into Egypt. We have Greeks and Romans, as we know. They also moved into Egypt and began to occupy that region as well, and heavily mixing with the local population. But even among these migrant elements beginning to populate Lower Egypt, we see that ancient Egyptian royalty, or the elite ruling class, oftentimes practiced endogamy. Endogamy was their way of preserving their royal lineage, which was more similar to Nubian ancestry than to any Levantine ancestry from the Middle East or from any European ancestry, and we see that pointed out in this study. And this is actually not surprising because we know, again, that ancient Egypt was founded from the south, from Upper Egypt in the region of Nubia. So it makes sense that they would be attempting to preserve that ancient black African lineage. Now, these observations are often ignored, of course, by Eurocentrics because they do not fit within their framework, within their false reality that they have constructed. So remember, they are operating from a deluded, racist ideology which says people of color, melanated human beings, are not capable of creating civilization. Of course, that's false, and we've demonstrated that time and time again. I'm noticing that the Eurocentric worldview that derides and dehumanizes humans of color around the world, that framework is starting to shatter, and we're seeing that time and time again, especially as people of African descent and people of various other descents are starting to reclaim our history. We're seeing that their delusions are starting to shatter, and that is a good thing, okay? The facts that I have presented here go against the false reality and their delusions. And so hopefully this is just yet another stone to go and shatter their deluded worldviews. Now, thank you for watching. This is the end of this video. I'm going to be making an entire series discussing the accomplishments and the civilizations of melanated magical miracles around the world. So we're going to look more at Africa and of course South Asia and of course the melanated beautiful people of the Americas. And we're going to really try to deconstruct the racist Eurocentric ideologies which have sought and continue in some cases to seek, to destroy, to deride, disrespect and dehumanize us people of color.